Welcome to part 1 of the Aeldari 2022 Codex review. This part features the Aspect Warriors, the Phoenix Lords, their associated Exarch powers, and relics. Feel free to check out the other videos in this series for contents on the rest of the book, but for now, let's start talking Aspect Warriors. The Aspect Warriors all share some pretty common rules in regards to their keywords and factions and abilities. The keywords that they all include are Aeldari, Asuryani, and Craftworld, as well as, for the most part, Infantry, Core, Aspect Warrior, and then their associated Aspect Warrior keyword. Obviously, things like the Crimson Hunter won't have Infantry, and likewise the Shining Spears will have Biker instead. We're going to go through them in order of the Codex, starting with the Elite section. The first Aspect Warrior is the Dire Avengers. The Dire Avengers move 7, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound on the basic Dire Avenger for 2 on the Exarch, 2 attack space with 3 on the Exarch, and leadership 8 with a 4+ save for both as well. Every model is equipped with an Avenger Shuriken Catapult, 18 inches, assault 3, strength 4, neg 2, and 1 damage with the Shuriken special rule, which increases the AP by an additional -2 on a roll of a 6 to wound. The Exarch can replace his Shuriken Catapult with a Shuriken Pistol and either a Dire Sword or a Power Glaive, or you can be equipped with 1 additional Shuriken Catapult. He can also swap his Shuriken Pistol for a Shimmer Shield. This essentially represents all the weapon options and combinations in the box set. They have the Strands of Fate and Battle Focus abilities alongside the Aspect Armor rule, which gives them a 5+ invulnerable save. It should be noted that Aspect Armor as a rule impacts every single Aspect Warrior with the exception of the Crimson Hunter. They also have a special rule called Defensive Tactics. While this unit contains an Exarch model, if this unit is performing an action, it can still make attacks with ranged weapons without that action failing. I've heard plenty of people disappointed that the Dire Avenger have moved to the Elite slot. However, this rule alone gives you significant play with them on the table despite them competing in a very dense Elite space. The ability to perform actions while still remaining useful on the table to perform pressure and inflict damage, especially with combined with some of the stratagems in the book and auras that are in play, not to mention Farseer powers. Dire Avengers actually have a pretty significant place in the mid-board because they can advance, take objectives, and perform those actions that are so desperately required for so few models within the Craftworld army. Moving on, we find Fire Dragons. Fire Dragons have a very similar profile to the Dire Avengers with the explicit exception of toughness 4. They all carry Fire Dragon fusion guns, which are 12 inches, assault 1, strength 9, -4 AP, and d6 +2 damage. The Exarch can swap his fusion gun for a Dragon's Breath Flamer or a Fire Pike. The Flamer is a strength 6 -1, 1 damage, assault d6 auto hitting Flamer, while the Fire Pike is a 18-inch fusion gun with an increased damage profile of d6 +4. They, like the Dire Avengers, keep Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor, but pick up the special rule Assured Destruction. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets a vehicle or monster, reroll wound rolls of 1. While being core, they're still affected by Guide, so very easy to get extra rerolls for them. The one problem that exists is they are a very pricey unit for such a squishy unit, and you're also in an awkward position of the 12-inch range, meaning that they almost certainly will only get to fire once before they're charged and killed. Still, if you want something dead, it's pretty hard to go past them. Moving on to the Howling Banshees. Howling Banshees obviously received a new plastic kit towards the tail end of 8th edition. They are movement 8, 3+ weapon skill and ballistic skill, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound, 3 attack space, and a leadership 8 with a 4+ save. The Exarch picks up the extra wound and the extra attack, as is every other Aspect Warrior's profile. They come with a Shuriken Pistol, a Banshee Blade, and a Howling Banshee Mask. It's important to note that the Banshee Blade is essentially a slightly improved power sword with +1 strength, -4 AP, and 1 damage. The Banshee Mask gives the unit a special ability. Each time you select an enemy as a target of a charge by the bearer's unit, until the end of the phase, that unit cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. While an enemy unit is within engagement range of the bearer, if the bearer's unit made a charge move this turn, the enemy unit is not eligible to fight in this phase until all other eligible units from your army have done so. So this is no Overwatch, or no set to defend, and fight last. That's pretty significant when you consider that these models are 3 attacks each at strength 4 minus 4. It gets even more interesting after that because the Exarch can swap her Banshee Blade for an Executioner or a Triskel. The Triskel being the throwing disc that first came out on Jane Zar and is now obviously available in the plastic kit. She can also swap both her Banshee Blade and Shuriken Pistol for a pair of Mirror Swords. The squad, obviously, like the other Aspect Warriors, has Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor. They also have 2 special rules, Acrobatic, which this unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced, and each time an attack is made against this unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So -1 to hit and advance and charge is pretty huge for such a light unit. It lets them cross the table quickly and obviously gives them a modicum of additional protection. They also have a special rule called Whirling Death. Each time a model in this unit makes a melee attack, if that model's unit made a charge move this turn, add 1 to the wound roll. This means that at strength 4, they're actually wounding most Space Marines on 3s, which is pretty significant. Moving on to my favourite Aspect Warrior, the Striking Scorpions. We have a very similar profile to the other ones we've seen so far. Movement 7, and otherwise lots of 3s with 3 attacks base, but 3+ armor this time. They all come with Shuriken Pistols, Scorpion Chainswords, and Manda Blasters. The Scorpion Chainsword is a +2 strength, -1 AP, 1 damage weapon that adds an additional attack, much like a standard chainsword from other factions. Manda Blasters mean that each time the bearer makes a melee attack that targets a unit excluding vehicles or monsters, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. This makes them great for clearing out, well, pretty much anything non-vehicle or monster, because they do have 4 attacks base with 5 on the Exarch, assuming he keeps his Scorpion Chainsword. Speaking of the Exarch, he can swap his Chainsword for a Scorpion's Claw, or he can swap his Shuriken Pistol and Scorpion Chainsword with a Biting Blade, both of which very viable options, the Biting Blade increasing his attacks further, while the Scorpion's Claw giving him a more power fist-like profile at strength 6, neg 3, and 2 damage. Like the other aspects, they have Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor, but also pick up advanced positions, allowing them to deploy anywhere outside of 9 inches of an enemy model or outside of 9 inches of the enemy deployment zone at the start of the game. And they also have Sustained Assault, meaning that each time an unmodified hit roll of 6 is rolled, it scores 1 additional hit. However, these additional attacks can't benefit from the Manda Blaster ability. It does mean, though, that given that the basic Striking Scorpion has 4 attacks with exploding 6s to hit, and then 6s on the first round of attacks inflicting mortal wounds, there's a significant amount of damage in the squad despite them only being 1 damage profile each. Moving into the fast attack section, we have Swooping Hawks. Again, a very familiar profile here. 2 attacks per model, 3 on the Exarch, with a 14-inch move, but otherwise very similar. They all come with Laz Blasters, which are now an Assault 4, 24-inch, Strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. However, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically wounds, which is a nice addition. So a squad of 10 of these puts out 40 shots, hitting on 3s at strength 4 with 6s auto wounding. The Exarch can replace their Laz Blaster with a Hawke's Talon. The Hawke's Talon has a very similar profile to the Laz Blaster, but it picks up a point of strength and a point of AP, so strength 5 and -1. And the Exarch can also be equipped with an Aeldari Power Sword, which is a standard power sword of +1 strength and -3 AP. They pick up Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor, as we've seen with past units, but also Sudden Assault, allowing them to deep strike. They also have a special rule called Sky Leap, which means in your shooting phase, instead of making a battle focus move, you can instead remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up anywhere on the battlefield that was more than 9 inches away from enemy models. This rule is potentially what makes Swooping Hawks so good, the ability to redeploy them turn to turn anywhere on the table in order to score secondaries or to pressure different parts of the table. I can easily see multiple units of Swooping Hawks becoming a very viable unit on the battlefield. Moving on to Warp Spiders. We haven't had new models for these. These still, I think 1994 is the model age, somewhere around that sort of period in time. So they are getting up to nearly 30 years old now. We have a movement of 12 and base 2 attacks like the Swooping Hawk, and each model is equipped with a Death Spinner. The Death Spinner is a 12-inch range, Assault D6, Strength 6, -2 AP, 1 damage with Blast. The Warp Jump Generator is the main ability of the unit. Each time this Bearer's unit makes a normal move, a battle focus move, advances, falls back, or makes a charge move. Until that move is complete, models in that unit can move horizontally through models and terrain features, but they cannot finish a move on top of another model or its base. When the Bearer's unit makes a battle focus move, you can roll 2d6 instead of 1d6 to determine the maximum distance models in the unit can move. However, if you roll a double 1, the unit suffers a mortal wound. Again, gives them amazing flexibility in terms of maneuvering around the table. It's going to mean they average something in the range of 19 to 20 inches of movement every turn. So it's not quite Swooping Hawks, but it obviously isn't limited by the 9-inch Deep Strike rule for the Swooping Hawks. The Exarch can be equipped with an additional Death Spinner or Power Blades. The unit also gains Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor, as well as Sudden Assault, much like the Swooping Hawks for Deep Strike. They have an additional rule called Flicker Jump. The first time in each phase, this unit is selected as the target of a charge. If that unit is not within an engagement range of enemy units, it can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. Until the end of the phase, this unit cannot then set to Overwatch or set to defend. What's interesting about this is it lets you move 6 inches when selected as the target of a charge. There's no caveat there that mentions that the charging unit can then redirect. So it actually could mean, unlike a lot of these rules where they do have that caveat, it would mean that you couldn't redirect. Now, I know that with the Autarch, he obviously also has a jump generator, but it's an Autarch jump generator, and he doesn't have Flicker Jump. So it's a bit hard to tell what's going to happen with that one. At the moment, you can't redirect a charge from him, from the Warp Spiders. Moving on to Shining Spears. Shining Spears have taken a little bit of a change from most of the previous units. Unlike other aspect units, which are 1 Exarch and then 4 to 9 models, the Shining Spears are 1 Exarch and 2 to 5 models. They have a movement of 16, a toughness of 4, 2 wounds base, and 3 attacks base with a 3+ save. They start with the Laser Lance and Twin Shuriken Catapults. The Laser Lance has a combat profile and a shooting profile. The shooting profile is a 6-inch range, Assault 1, Strength 6, Neg 4, and 2 damage. In combat, they are +1 strength, -4, and 2 damage. However, when they charge, it's +3 strength instead. That means that in a standard round of combat, they'll be strength 4, -4, and 2 damage, but on the charge, they're strength 6, -4, and 2 damage. The Exarch can swap their Laser Lance for a Paragon Saber or a Star Lance, as well as swapping their Twin Shuriken Catapults for a Shuriken Cannon, and they can also be equipped with a Shimmer Shield. The Exarch Shimmer Shield will give just the Exarch a 4+ invulnerable save, while the Shuriken Cannon follows the standard profile for other Eldar units. Looking at the Paragon Saber and the Star Lance again has 2 profiles, 6-inch range, Assault 1, Strength 8, -4 and 2 damage, or it's +5 on the turn it charges to the user's strength in combat at -4, 2 damage, and only +1, -4, 2 damage outside of a charge. The Paragon Saber's always been an interesting weapon that has never really felt like it belonged on a Shining Spear Exarch. The weapon is +1 strength, -4 AP, and 1 damage. However, each time the bearer fights, it makes 1 additional attack with this weapon, and each time an attack is made with this weapon, you can reroll the attacks to hit and wound rolls. I'm not sure that a strength 4, -4, 1 damage weapon is good enough to take over the Star Lance, but that remains to be seen on the table. Like all Aspect Warriors, they have Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Aspect Armor rules, as well as 2 rules of their own. Ride the Wind, which means anytime they advance, they automatically advance 6 inches, and Aerobatic Grace, which means each time a ranged attack is made against them, subtract 1 from the hit roll. That obviously will help them survive significantly longer. Moving now to the heavy support section and the Dark Reapers. Dark Reapers have seen some significant changes from past editions. Unlike all the other Aspect Warrior infantry squads, the Dark Reapers have a fixed unit size of 5, 1 Exarch and 4 Dark Reapers. They are movement 6 inches, slowest of the foot Aspect Warriors, and base 2 attacks, but have a very familiar profile. They are all armed with a Reaper launcher. The Reaper launcher has 2 fire modes, either Heavy 1, Strength 8, -2 and 3 damage, or Heavy 2, Strength 5, -2, 2 damage, both at 48 inches. Both of these weapon profiles are fantastic for fixed, consistent damage at a fantastic range. The Exarch can swap his Reaper launcher for an Aeldari missile launcher, a Shuriken cannon, or a Tempest launcher. I feel if you're only taking one, you'll either keep the Reaper launcher or swap for the Tempest launcher. The Tempest launcher being a 36-inch range, heavy 2d6, strength 4, -2, 1 damage blast weapon. However, it can target units that are out of line of sight, which is what makes it so good. The unit has Strands of Fate, but not Battle Focus, but they do keep the Aspect Armor rule. Their Inescapable Accuracy rule, which made them so dangerous in past editions, is reduced to allowing them to ignore the benefits of dense cover. That's probably their biggest problem now, in that they, when moving and firing, will take the penalty as well. And they will obviously suffer -1s to hit for anyone that actually has a rule, like Harlequins, for example. This also goes along with a fairly hefty points cost for the squad. Moving on, we actually have one vehicle aspect warrior in the Crimson Hunter. Now, the Crimson Hunter, it should be noted, there is no profile for Crimson Hunter Exarch, and the only way to gain one is through the Exarch powers, which we'll go through in a moment. The Crimson Hunter is a movement of 20 to 60 in its top profile and 20 to 25 in its bottom profile. It has a weapon skill of 6+, a ballistic skill of 3+, which reduces to 4 and then 5+ as it takes damage, a strength and toughness of 6, 12 wounds, with 3 D3 and 1 attacks at leadership 8 with a 3+ save. Each profile degrading is 7 to 12, 4 to 6, and then 1 to 3 is its bottom profile. Another interesting change to the Crimson Hunter is that it comes base with 2 star cannons and 1 pulse laser. In the past, the star cannons have been limited to the Exarch. These are now standard and must be upgraded to the Bright Lancers. The pulse laser, should be noted, as still being a fantastic weapon, and it gains most of the Bright Lance rules in that its damage is now D3+3, but it is a point worse in AP at only -3, but its strength is 9. Its range has gone up 12 inches to 48 over the Bright Lance, and it's heavy 2 rather than heavy 1. The Crimson Hunter does have Strands of Fate, but obviously does not have Battle Focus, and it does not have Aspect Armor either. It has Supersonic, which means that it must pivot up to 90 degrees before it moves, or it may pivot up to 90 degrees before it moves, but it cannot pivot again after its initial pivot. It actually has lost the Wings of Cain rules. It does, however, maintain Sky Hunter. Each time this model makes a ranged attack against a unit that can fly, add 1 to the attack's hit roll, and you can reroll the wound roll. Essentially meaning that it's a 2+ to hit against fly and rerolls wounds. The model also has hard to hit, so it's -1 to hit from ranged attacks. It is airborne, which means you can only charge it if you have the fly keyword, and obviously all the other limits around aircraft are applied as well, and it will explode when destroyed, potentially. So those are the Aspect Warriors. I'm really pleased with most of them. Unfortunately, I feel the Crimson Hunter probably has been left behind and is suffering from sins of the past, much like the Dark Reapers are. Another slightly interesting thing about the Dark Reapers is the kit allows you to build an alternate model to the Exarch, which would allow you to obviously build a bigger squad, but the squad size is fixed at 1 Exarch and 4 models. So for me, it feels like there's been a change in the rules after the kit was approved and in production. Of these, I'm really pleased with the fast attack in particular. Swooping Hawks and Warp Spiders will definitely see some time in my armies alongside Shining Spears. I also feel like Striking Scorpions will probably see a lot of play for me. Banshees and Avengers will see periodic use, and unfortunately, I think the Fire Dragons will join the Dark Reapers and the Crimson Hunter as rarities on the table for me. We're going to move on now to the Exarch powers that are available to the Aspect Warrior squads in this book. These operate very similarly to other books, much like the Captain Commander rules for the Custodes. These are points upgrades which are bought for Exarchs. If your army is Battleforged and includes any Asuryani detachments, excluding auxiliary support and super heavy auxiliary, then when you are mustering your army, you can upgrade Aspect Warrior units from your army that contain an Exarch by giving them 1 Exarch power chosen from those below. To do so, select 1 Aspect Warrior unit that contains a model that has the word Exarch in their profile, and select one of the appropriate power upgrades from those listed. You can also select any Crimson Hunter unit from your army to be upgraded to an Exarch. When you do so, select one of the appropriate powers. Each time you upgrade a unit to have an Exarch power, its power rating increases. If you're playing match play, it increases using points. If the unit has an Exarch power, the Exarch model will also gain bonuses to its profile. Every Exarch who takes a power will gain +1 wound, And then if they are a Crimson Hunter, Dark Reaper, Sweeping Hawk, or Fire Dragon, they will increase their ballistic skill by 1. Or if they are Striking Scorpion, Howling Banshee, Shining Spear, or Warp Spider, they will increase their attacks by 1. This does mean that Dire Avengers don't gain a profile modifier other than the wounds. If your army or Crusade force cannot include more than one unit with the same Exarch power, or more than one Crimson Hunter model upgraded to an Exarch, which means that if you do choose to run 2 flyers, only one of them can be a Crimson Hunter Exarch. The powers are pretty interesting as we go through them all. The Crimson Hunter powers are Eyes of Cain, Strafing Assault, and Sweeping Evasion, and I feel like as we look through these powers, there'll be one power that feels like it's a really good power, one that's an okay power, and one that you'll take only if you have 3 of that unit. Obviously with the Crimson Hunter that doesn't happen because we can only have 1. Eyes of Cain originally felt like a really good option because it automatically hits the enemy if it has the fly keyword, but the model's already hitting with a ballistic skill of 2+ and +1 to hit, so Eyes of Cain feels like a trap once you actually start thinking about it. Strafing Assault means you don't receive the benefits of cover, and Sweeping Evasion gives it an invulnerable save. I feel like Sweeping Evasion is probably where you'll go if you're going to sink the points into a Crimson Hunter Exarch. Moving on to the Fire Dragon and Sweeping Hawk abilities. The Fire Dragons get Blazing Fury, Burning Heat, and Dragon's Bite. Blazing Fury increases the range characteristic of the Exarch and the units in it by 4 inches while the Exarch is alive, which is pretty fantastic for such a short range unit. However, I don't know that 16 inches on those fusion guns will keep them alive any longer. Burning Heat means that once you are shooting at a target within 9 inches, the attack automatically wounds, which is another fantastic ability. Unfortunately, anything that lets them deep strike puts them more than 9 inches away, so you have to deliver them even closer. Dragon's Bite is probably a good default power if you are running Fire Dragons. The Exarch, when he attacks a vehicle or a monster that is within half range when this unit is selected to shoot, if the attack is made with a fusion gun or a fire pike, add 2, making his profile d6 plus 6 damage. Or with the Flamer, his damage goes up to 2, and you can reroll the wound roll. I think Dragon's Bite for 15 points is probably a good default choice. Burning Heat feels really good as long as you've got a way of deploying them, and Blazing Fury is probably my least favourite of the 3. With Sweeping Hawks, we get Rapid Redeployment, Suppressing Fire, and Winged Evasion. Rapid Redeployment allows you to shoot in the turn in which you fell back. This is pretty solid for them, although I can't help but feel that if they do get charged by anything meaningful, there's probably not going to be much left to shoot when they do fall back. Suppressing Fire means that in your shooting phase after you have shot, you can select one enemy unit that was targeted by a ranged attack made by this Sweeping Hawk Exarch model in this unit, and roll 3d6. If the result is greater than the enemy unit's leadership, they start your next turn. That unit cannot fire Overwatch, set to defend or perform actions. If it was performing an action, it immediately fails. And Winged Evasion means that if it contains a Sweeping Hawk Exarch model, each time a ranged attack is made against this unit, -1 to hit. Of the 3 of them, I feel like Suppressing Fire combined with their ability to rapidly redeploy across the battlefield gives you so many opportunities. Stopping Overwatch is nice, set to defend is okay, but stopping actions as well is pretty significant. And it's certainly where I'd start with my Sweeping Hawks, is Suppressing Fire. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Dire Avenger and Warp Spider abilities. Dire Avengers get Defensive Stance, Shredding Fire, and Stand Firm. Defensive Stance is applied in your shooting phase while this unit contains the Exarch. Models in this unit can make attacks with ranged weapons even while they're in engagement range of enemy units, and can do so even if other friendly units are also within engagement range of those units. If they do so, those attacks can only target enemy units within engagement range. So it allows you to shoot in combat, which obviously significantly allows them to deal more damage than they would normally with just a basic close combat weapon. Shredding Fire means that the unit that makes a ranged attack with a shuriken weapon changes the shuriken ability to a roll of 5+ rather than a 6, which increases their AP significantly on 5s instead of 6s. Stand Firm gives them the objective secured ability again, and each model in the unit counts as 2 models, as well as adding 1 to the leadership characteristic of models in the unit. I think if I'm only taking 1 unit, I'm going to take Stand Firm first, because when you're objective secured, and then you combine that with their innate ability to perform actions and still shoot, that just feels like a really good combination. The fact that Stand Firm is only 10 points is just a bonus. Warp Spiders get 3, Spider's Lair, Surprise Assault, and Web of Deceit. All of them the same price, and all of them are quite interesting. Spider's Lair essentially for a turn lets you select a piece of area terrain, forces the enemy unit to treat it as difficult ground, and they can take D3 mortal wounds on a 2+ when they first enter it. Surprise Assault allows you to, when you first deep strike, every model in the unit makes 1 additional attack with each death spinner, so the weapons go to D6+1, which is pretty solid. And Web of Deceit allows you once per battle, instead of making a battle focus move, to redeploy more than 9 inches away from enemy models anywhere on the battlefield, which is basically the Swooping Hawk's innate ability. Again, I feel like taking multiple units of these, for one unit you'll take Web of Deceit for the maneuverability, or perhaps Surprise Assault. That's certainly my second choice. Spider's Lair is more of a fun power to use rather than anything that will be consistently used. Moving on, we're going to talk about Shining Spear and Howling Banshees. The Shining Spears get Expert Lancers, Heart Strike, and Lightning attacks. Expert Lancers means that in the fight phase, each time a model in this unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. Pretty solid choice. Heart Strike, each time a unit Shining Spear Exarch model makes a melee attack, an unmodified wound roll of 5 inflicts a mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. That's okay. Lightning attacks, each time this unit makes a consolidate move, it can move an additional 6, so that gives them a 9-inch consolidate. I feel like lightning attacks with the 9-inch consolidate gives you huge opportunities for tagging things and for pulling things into combat that don't necessarily want to be there, that thought they were safe, particularly after you wipe a squad out. I think Expert Lancers is also very good because it means the unit's now hitting on 2s when they charge, which obviously maximizes their damage output. Heart Strike, because it only affects the Exarch, if it affected the whole squad, it would be good, but it's only one model, so it's a bit disappointing. Howling Banshees gain Graceful Avoidance, Nerve-Shredding Shriek, and Piercing Strikes. Graceful Avoidance gives the unit a 4+ invulnerable save against melee attacks, which I feel like will be a default choice for a lot of people when they pick Exarch powers for the Banshees. However, Piercing Strikes, if you have Mirror Swords, increases the damage profile by 1 to make those Mirror Swords damage 2. And because Mirror Swords double the amount of attacks, that means that the Banshee Exarch has 10 attacks with 2 damage weapons, which is a huge boost for that squad in terms of dealing with harder targets. Nerve-Shredding Shriek is probably the least useful of the 3. Each time this unit finishes a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of the Exarch and roll a dice. On a 2+, they suffer 1 mortal wound, and until the end of the turn, subtract 1 from combat attrition tests. It's a nice, 2+ for an extra wound is fine, but Graceful Avoidance I feel like will be the default, and Piercing Strikes is another really good option. Moving on to the Striking Scorpion and Dark Reaper powers, we have Striking Scorpions gaining Crushing Blows, Deadly Ambush, and Scorpion Sting. Crushing Blows is my favourite of the 3, which allows a Striking Scorpion Exarch, when it makes melee attacks against a non-Titanic unit, to automatically wound the target. For 15 points, that's just fantastic. It gives you that guaranteed damage profile, and even when you're strength 6 with a Scorpion's Claw, sometimes you just need to hurt bigger targets. Deadly Ambush, while this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch, and the unit is wholly within an area terrain feature, each time a melee attack is made by a model in this unit, add 1 to the hit roll and improve the AP by 1. It's okay. I feel like you're going to need the right sort of table to take the biggest advantage of that. Scorpion Sting means that each time the bearer makes a melee attack against a non-vehicle unit, an unmodified wound roll of 5 inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. Now, the interesting part about this one is each time this unit is selected to fight, if the unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch model, until the fight is resolved, replace the ability of the unit's Exarch model Laz Blasters. So it doesn't affect the whole squad. Now, that for 30 points, I feel like it's meant to work on the entire squad. However, it does specifically say replace the ability of this unit's Striking Scorpion Exarch models Laz Blasters. Now, it does work against monsters, not vehicles, but I don't know it's worth 30 points, so I feel like Crushing Blows is just the default to take for Scorpions. You'll take the other 2 if you're running 30 Scorpions, but you're taking it for the profile buff, not necessarily for the rules. Dark Reapers is our last Aspect Warrior we need to talk about for Exarch powers. Bringer of Death, Focused Fire, and Reaper's Reach. Bringer of Death essentially modifies the weapon that the Exarch is armed with. If he has a Reaper Launcher or a Shuriken Cannon, you get 1 extra attack with those weapons. However, if you're armed with a Aeldari Missile Launcher or a Tempest Launcher, then your target does not receive the benefits of cover against the attacks from those weapons. I feel like in this case you would probably take the Reaper Launcher to get a heavy 2 or heavy 3 weapon, which is guaranteed damage at a consistent range. But ignoring the benefits of cover is okay when you start talking about certain other profiles that might be available to you for the Tempest Launcher or the Aeldari Missile Launcher. I just feel like it works better though with the Reaper Launcher than anything else. Focused Fire. Each time this unit's Dark Reaper Exarch model makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the wound roll. Again, a very solid power if you just are taking 3 units of Reapers. And Reaper's Reach means that the squad does not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons in the turn that they move. So it gives them back their ability to move around and fire without penalty, which I feel like Reaper's Reach at the cheapest of the 3 becomes the default option. And then again, if you're taking more than 1 unit, you would probably end up taking Bringer of Death first and then Focused Fire last. So as you can see here, the Exarch powers are all priced up differently. You can check those out in the summary now. But moving on, there's a important stratagem that affects Exarch models. Now this stratagem is called Relic of the Shrines. It's 1 command point. Use the stratagem before the battle when you are mustering your army if your wallet has the Asiani keyword. Select 2 models from your army that have the word Exarch in their profile. Each of these models can be given 1 Aspect Shrine relic from page 118. This must be a relic that they could have. Each relic in your army must be unique, and you cannot use this stratagem to give a model 2 relics. You can only use this stratagem once unless you're playing a Strike Force battle, in which case you can use it twice, or an Onslaught, in which case you use it 3 times. So this gives you very unique weapons that you can hand off to your Exarchs. Now, there is only 1 weapon per aspect type, which means that if you do choose to spend that 1 CP, you get access to 2 of these relics, but you obviously can't select 2 Striking Scorpions to have a weapon because there's only 1. So, with that in mind, we get the Avenging Blade for the Dire Avengers, which gives us a swap for a Dire Sword. This gives you a melee weapon which is +2 strength but no AP or damage, because each time you successfully wound a target with this weapon, it inflicts a mortal wound, and then the attack sequence ends. Now this is okay, Dire Avenger Exarchs start with 3 attacks, but I don't know I'd use this stratagem to give them this relic as a first choice. Dragon's Fury is applied to a Fire Dragon Exarch model, and it means that when the unit is selected as a target of a charge, subtract 2 from the charge roll. Again, unfortunately, the short range of the Fire Dragon's guns mean that even deploying at the maximum distance of 11.999 inches, a -2 to the charge after an enemy unit moves 6 is probably not going to keep you alive, so it's probably, again, something I wouldn't consider in a first pass. Shadow Sting makes the list of my initial must-have of these relics. It's a Striking Scorpion Exarch model with a Biting Blade only, and it replaces the Biting Blade profile with a +3 strength, -2 AP, 2 damage weapon that makes 2 additional attacks. Combined with being an Exarch with a power, this means that you could have a base of 5 attacks plus these 2 for strength 6, -2, 2 damage with 7 attacks. Pretty solid profile. Crone's Scream is applied to a Howling Banshee Exarch model that inflicts mortal wounds when you charge. On a 2+, and you inflict D3 mortal wounds. However, it's 1 additional mortal wound for each charge move you make during the battle. So, in a late game scenario where the Exarch and a handful of her handmaidens are still alive, you could be getting D3 +2 or 3 or even more. In theory, the max would be D3 +5 if you made 5 successful charges. But the reality is probably more like D3 +2 or maybe D3 +3. The Phoenix Plume is the next one for Sweeping Hawk Exarchs. It gives the Exarch a 4+ invulnerable save, and it gives the unit a 5+ ignore wounds ability, which is pretty solid. I mean, I suspect that Swimming Hawks are probably going to take a brunt of firepower as they bounce around the table, so as a choice, the Phoenix Plume isn't bad. Spider's Bite is the Warp Spider Exarch ability. It replaces the Power Blades for a +2 strength, -4 AP, 2 damage, with 6s to wound, inflicting 3 damage. Again, it's a really nice weapon, and it sort of argues in the same space as Crone's Scream, the Phoenix Plume, and then Kane's Lance for the Shining Spears, which we'll talk about now. Shining Spear Exarch model only. Each time this bearer finishes a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range and roll a dice. On a 4+, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds and must fight last. I think that if you're only taking one unit of Shining Spears, you'll take Kane's Lance every time. The ability to deal mortal wounds, but more importantly, force the enemy to fight last, can't be underestimated. The last relic you have access to is Shrine Skull, which is a Dark Reaper Exarch model with a Reaper launcher only. If the enemy unit has any models destroyed by an attack made by the bearer, until the end of the turn, subtract 1 from the combat attrition tests for that enemy unit. I think if you're going to take Shrine Skull, you'd have to take the Exarch power for the extra shot just to maximize the chances of inflicting damage, but in all honesty, I feel like Shrine Skull is something you'll almost never take. So my auto-include would be Shadow Sting most of the time, because I feel like everyone will enjoy striking Scorpions to some degree. Kane's Lance is probably a close second, and then Spider's Bite, the Phoenix Plume, and Crone Scream kind of tying it up in the middle. The Avenging Blade, followed by Dragon's Fury, and then Shrine Skull would be my order of preference, I feel like. No discussion of the Aspect Warriors would be complete unless we started speaking about the Phoenix Lords to round this out. The Phoenix Lords have all seen a significant improvement in the latest book, and I think you'll see them quite regularly on the tabletop in different capacities. We're going to start by talking about the first plastic Phoenix Lord we received in Jane Zar. Jane Zar has a movement rate of 8 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2+, strength and toughness 4 with 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9 and a 2+ save. She comes with the Blade of Destruction, the Silent Death and Terror's Lament, and she's unique. All Phoenix Lords gain the Favoured of Kane rule, which means that they can only ever suffer 3 wounds in any phase, and have a 4+ invulnerable save. So that's standard across all 6 of these. The Blade of Destruction has 2 profiles, one of which is +2 strength, -3 AP and 2 damage. The other is strength user -3, 1 damage, but allows you to double her attacks. The Silent Death throwing weapon is a range 12, assault 6, strength 6, -3 and 1 damage. Terror's Lament is very similar to a standard Banshee Mask, however it also forces the enemy to subtract 1 from their attacks characteristic while in engagement range with the bearer. You're also still in the position where you can't fire Overwatch, set to defend, and fight last. She has the Battle Focus and Strands of Fate rules, as do all of the Phoenix Lords. Now this should be noted, includes Mayu Gun Ra, despite the fact that his aspect doesn't gain Battle Focus. She has 2 rules, Acrobatic, which means that she is able to advance and charge, and when an attack is made against this model, -1 to the hit roll. She doesn't gain the Whirling Death ability, and that's kind of consistent across all of these Phoenix Lords. They don't necessarily gain all of the abilities of their native aspect. She does, however, have a rule called Storm of Silence. Now, each of the Phoenix Lords has the same rule, however, all it does is swap the keyword that it affects. So in Jane Zar's case, the aura says, while a friendly Howling Banshee unit is within 6 inches of this model, add to the leadership characteristic of the models in that unit, and the unit has the objective secured ability. In the case of a Sherman, it would swap the Howling Banshee wording for Dire Avengers. In Fugan's case, it swaps for Fire Dragons, and so on. This also means that because each of the Phoenix Lords has their own keyword, it means that Jane Zar, alongside each of the other aspects, will gain... alongside each of the other Phoenix Lords, I should say, will gain +2 leadership and become objective secured themselves. This is a pretty big deal because the Phoenix Lords are hard to put down, and being OBSEC gives you some great late game advantages where you have a very powerful character that can be hard to shift that is still objective secured. I feel like Jane Zar is probably overshadowed by Karandras, which we'll talk about later when it comes to damage output. However, her ability to advance and charge and really support the Banshees by subtracting 1 from enemy attacks can't be underestimated, and I think you will see her on the table periodically. After Jane Zar, we'll talk about Fugan. Fugan has a more similar profile to the average Phoenix Lord at movement 7, weapon skill and ballistic skill 2+. However, his strength and toughness are both 5, with 6 attacks, 6 wounds, and a leadership 9 with 2+ save. He does have Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Favoured of Kane, as I previously mentioned, and he is armed with the Seer Song and the Fire Axe. The Fire Axe is a melee weapon, strength user, so strength 5 base, -4 AP and 3 damage. Now, his Seer Song Lance has an 18-inch Assault 1, Strength 10, -4, and D6 +4 damage, or it can be used with a 12-inch beam that is Assault 1, Strength 6, -3, and a flat 4 damage that hits everything in a straight line between the closest point of this bearer's base and the closest model in the target unit. He gains the Burning Lance aura, which is the same as Janezar's but affects fire dragons. He has the Assured Destruction rule, which means that each time he makes a ranged attack against a vehicle or monster, he rerolls wound rolls of 1. And he also has a rule called Unquenchable Resolve, which means that while this model has lost any wounds, add 1 to the strength and attack characteristics of this model, which means that once he's wounded, he's strength 6 with 7 attacks with the fire axe. He's pretty damaging. I think he might be a little bit slept on because he's not so much an augmenter so much as a damage dealer, but it's strength 6, toughness 5, 2 up, 4 up, with maximum 3 wounds a phase, flat 3 damage. He's only one of 2 Phoenix Lords to have flat 3 damage, so I don't think that can be underestimated. Moving on, we're going to talk about the second plastic Phoenix Lord, Mayu Gun Ra. Mayu Gun Ra is movement 7, 2+2+, strength and toughness 4, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2+ save. He carries the Mayu Guitar, which is a 36-inch range Assault 6, Strength 7, -2 damage, and any unmodified wound rolls of 6 inflict 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to normal damage. It should be noted the Mayu Guitar does not have the Shuriken word, which means that it caps out at -2 AP, unlike other Shuriken cannons. In combat, the Mayu Guitar can also be swung around like a scythe, at Strength +2, -2 AP, and 2 damage. As mentioned previously, he does have the Battle Focus rule, unlike his aspect, but he also has Strands of Fate and Favoured of Cain. He also has Inescapable Accuracy like his sons, meaning that he ignores the benefits of dense cover when attacking them. He also has a rule called Doom Incarnate. This ability means that each enemy model that is destroyed by an attack made by this model counts as 2 for the purposes in the morale phase. Lastly, his Harvester of Souls ability adds 2 to the leadership and gains objective secured to all Dark Reapers within 6. Moving on to what may be my favourite of the 6 Phoenix Lords in the present rule set, Baharith. Baharith has a movement of 14, a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2, strength and toughness of 4, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2+ save. He carries the Fury of the Tempest and the Shining Blade. Fury of the Tempest is an Assault 4, 24-inch, strength 6, -2, 2 damage weapon that unmodified hit rolls of 6 automatically wound. It's basically an improved Laz Blaster. The Shining Blade is a +1 strength, -3 AP, 2 damage weapon that unmodified hit rolls of 6 score 1 additional hit. So already he's putting out quite a lot of shots with a decent volume of attacks. At a decent profile, it's strength 5 or strength 6 and always 2 damage. He has the Battle Focus, Strands of Fate, and Favoured of Cain rules, but also has Sudden Assault, allowing him to deep strike into the game. His Cry of the Wind aura affects Swooping Hawks for leadership and objective secured, including himself, and he also has the rule called Cloud Strider. When this model consolidates or makes a Battle Focus move, you can instead remove this model and set it up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy models. This is an improvement on the standard Swooping Hawk Sky Leap ability because it allows it to be done in a Consolidate move as well as Battle Focus. Baharith now, with the speed that he has, can bounce around the table, charge things, hurt and damage them, and then disappear, ignoring reprisals because there's no limit on outside of engagement range or anything, so he can quite happily charge in with impunity and then disappear out of combat, and I think that's going to make him very powerful. Moving on to my last in terms of aspect history and lore, I think my 2 favourite Phoenix Lords, Karandras first, movement 7, weapon skill and ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness 4, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2+ save. That profile gets very familiar for the Phoenix Lords for the most part. He's armed with Ahara's Bane, which is his claw, Is-Ir Mathil, which is his blade, and then the Scorpion's Bite, which is his upgraded Manda Blaster. Ahara's Bane, the claw, is a melee weapon, ×2 strength, -4 AP and 2 damage, while the Shuriken weapon mounted on the back is Assault 2, strength 5, -1, 2 damage, with the Shuriken word with a 12-inch range. His Chainsword is +2 strength, -2 AP, 1 damage, and allows him to make 2 attacks instead of 1 if he chooses this profile. The Scorpion's Bite means that as long as he's targeting a non-vehicle, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 2 mortal wounds, in addition to any normal damage. He has the battle-focused Strands of Fate and Favoured of Cain rules, as well as advanced positions like his children, allowing him to forward deploy on the battlefield. He has Sustained Assault, much like the rest of the Striking Scorpions, meaning that any unmodified hit rolls of 6 score 1 additional hit, but they can't generate the Scorpion's bite ability off those additional hits. Lastly, he has the Shadow Hunter aura, which adds 2 to the leadership and gives Striking Scorpions the Objective Secured ability. I really like Karandras, and I'm desperate to try an army with 30 Striking Scorpions and Karandras forward deploying and then putting immediate pressure on the enemy. Last but certainly not least, the first of the Phoenix Lords, Asierman. Asierman has a move of 7, 2+2+, Strength and Toughness 4, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, Leadership 9 and a 2+ save. He now comes with the Sword of Asir, but his shuriken weapons are called the Bloody Twins. The Bloody Twins have a 24-inch range, Assault 6, Strength 4, -2 AP and 2 damage with the shuriken ability. The Sword of Asir is a +2 Strength, -3 AP, 3 damage weapon, and an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts D3 mortal wounds in addition to normal damage. So Asierman is the only other Phoenix Lord outside of Fugan that has a 3 damage weapon. He has the battle-focused Strands of Fate and Favoured of Cain rules, and his special rule is the first of the Phoenix Lords, giving him a 3+ invulnerable save, which has become really rare in the modern game. The Hand of Assyrian aura obviously gives the leadership and objective secured abilities to Dire Avengers within 6. Now, all of the Phoenix Lords are reasonably priced in my mind. None of them feel massively expensive, but at the same time, they're not cheap either. I think that fielding 1 is a pretty reasonable proposition for most armies, and the reality is fielding 2 is entirely doable as well. With Asierman at 150, Baharith at 140, Jainzar 140, Karandras 140, Mayu Gun Ra at 150, and then Fugan at 160, fielding Baharith and Asierman, or Baharith and Karandras, like I'm hoping to, feels really doable. Asierman is quite unique in that when you look at his defensive profile, he's only toughness 4, but he is 2+ armor, 3+ invulnerable, and can only take 3 wounds a phase. He, outside of sort of psychic attacks that deal mortal wounds reliably, he's going to be really hard to move. So I think we're in a really good position with the Phoenix Lords, where every one of them feels like an opportunity on the table to actually see some game time, which hasn't really happened in at least a couple of editions that I can think of. In the meantime, feel free to check out the other parts of this series. Part 2 will feature the Corsairs, if you're interested in discussing Prince Uriel and the Corsairs available in the new Codex Aeldari. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for listening.